lightning. It's powerful, it's electric and swift, and it is definitely disruptive. And when it strikes, it leaves a mark. It's at once a potent force that can bring a massive change, or a tool that, if harnessed, can provide literally enough energy to power the world. It was this concept of swift change and powerful energy that inspired this next session called Lightning Round Leadership. At events like Retail Now, all of us are used to listening to panels of industry experts and leaders, but we thought, what if we blew that concept up a little bit? And when we gather these people together, we talk about a different type of topic. What if we dug deeper into how their minds worked to find out what pivotal moments have changed them and shaped them? And what if we structured it so that the delivery of information came through short, impactful talks? It was kind of an out-of-the-box idea, and it was not an easy ask of these thought leaders, but it was also time. At a moment when our industry, when things are changing so rapidly, and change can be both disruptive and constructive, when inspiration's not always that easily found, perhaps this is the best time to find inspiration amongst our very own. So today, we're going to present to you 5 different perspectives. They range from views on life, to running businesses, to making tough choices or dealing with change. These speakers were hand-selected to bring these important messages to you today, and to help you look inward and gain insight before you depart Retail Now and head back to your business looking fearlessly into the future. And perhaps, just maybe, help challenge you to do the impossible things in your world, to catch the lightning in the bottle. We're going to have our first 3 speakers, take a short break, come back, have our last 2 speakers, and then we'll have our closing keynote speaker. Family man, bow tie guy, impassioned leader, thinker. These are the words that come to mind when we're thinking of ways to describe our first speaker. He's been a longtime champion and advocate of the RSPA who's spent a long career in the industry. He brings his passion, energetic leadership, and experience to every project that he's a part of to our members' benefit. And I am thrilled to invite to the stage Stephen Bergeron from APG Cash Drawer.
Good morning. This is, oh boy, it was left over from this morning in the dry run. So we'll keep going back and forth. Okay. This is an honor, a privilege, and I'm scared to death, which you guys probably find hard to believe because I've done this so many times. But I'm going to challenge how we think about life. Throw everything you know out the door, clear your mind, and let's go on a journey. How many of us in this audience are a glass half full? How about glass half empty? How about both? It really doesn't matter. It depends on the day, doesn't it? And that's what I want us to think about, okay? I could have picked a quote from Cicero or some Greek philosopher, but what I decided to do was I found something recently by Drew Barrymore. And she says, life is interesting. In the end, some of our greatest pains become our greatest strengths. Think about that for a moment. Attitude, it all starts with attitude. When I was a little kid, my parents told me I made mountains out of molehills. As a young adult, later in life, I was told I had a magnifying mind and that I had my glasses on backwards. As an adult, probably with some gray hair, I was told I suffered from cognitive distortion. That cost me a lot of money. But the bottom line is, I have the ability to make a big deal out of everything. And that's what we have to be cognizant of. So what is the difference between good and bad? It's really all about perspective, isn't it? How many of us had a good show? How many of us had a bad show? How do we know the difference between good and bad anyways? Ever go to a trade show and we're gonna get 25 leads, we're gonna get 50 leads, and we come out with just a couple? Is that a bad show? But one of those leads that you just got became the biggest deal of your year. Not only was it the biggest deal of your year, they became a lifetime customer. So now I ask you again, was that a good show or a bad show? There is no difference in my mind. How about 2007, 2008, when the economy took a tank? Business stunk. You couldn't close anything. You couldn't do anything right. But you hunkered down, you went back to the office with your exec team, and you redefined who you were going to be. And all of a sudden, coming out of 2000 and 2008, you skyrocketed. Life took off. So was 2007 a bad thing or a good thing? You reinvented yourself. It's all about the perspective. I have bad days, there's no doubt in my life. But I have the 10 best days of my life in my back pocket at all times. And they're pretty simple. I got married, yes, June 7th, 1980. We had a son, we had a daughter, we have a 5-year-old granddaughter. Awesome moments. But I'm going to share a secret. One of my awesome days is the death of my father. I'm serious. He'd been diagnosed with cancer. He went to the hospital, he came home, he really wanted to die at home. My wife and I drove to my parents' house, the house I grew up in, and at the foot of the bed that morning was my mom, my sister, myself, and Kathy. And we said goodbye to my father. It was awful. But for the month before, his eyes were really cloudy. He didn't recognize us all the time. He was in tough shape. And all of a sudden, after we all said goodbye, his eyes opened up. They were crystal blue, piercing blue. He smiled, he reached out, and he took his last breath. Powerful moment. A calmness came into that room that was overwhelming. So what does that mean? Last June, both of my in-laws became terminal. And within 12 days of each other, they both passed. But I was able to sit with my mother-in-law, 93 years old, and share with her that experience with my father. And she calmed down, and she relaxed, and she started her journey. So I ask you, that event 18 years ago with my dad, was that a good thing or a bad thing? It was horrific. I still try to pick up the phone and talk to him, and there's nobody on the other end. But the reality is, it helped me. When my son was young, he got run over by a lawnmower. It was awful. We had a doctor that we called Dr. No Poke, because he was a family psychologist. You know, no stitches, no surgery, he just talked to us. And he told my wife and I that this event is either going to tear you apart or bring you closer together. Spin forward a bunch of years, Kyle's in a very bad situation with his marriage. His life's falling apart. We have to hospitalize him. And Kathy and I hunker down, unconditional love with the kids. And we get through it. A year after that event, our son, who is a millennial, sends us an email called, "Phew." And he pours his heart out to us about the events of the last year, thanking us. He's a changed person. So had we not learned how to take all of these events and taught Kathy and me to hang on for dear life, we wouldn't have been there for our son. More importantly, we wouldn't have been able to celebrate. We're not quite up there with Bob, but we celebrated 36 years of marriage this past June. It's these events that have taught me how to live. Couple more points. Mentoring. Everybody in this room is a mentor, whether we know it or not. Okay? And so what that really means is Brianna, Chelsea, Justin, you're also mentoring us. As much as we think we're helping you, you're helping us. You know, I listened to Dave Sanders last night. The stuff that was a big issue in 1972 still remains a big issue in 2016. It's all about technology, and you guys are teaching us how to use it and how to move forward with it. Is he a good mentor or a bad mentor? Again, it doesn't matter. I've learned as much from the people that have thrown cell phones up against boardroom walls as I have from people that have told me, take this word processed memo, yes, I go back that far, and go back and think about the solution, not just the problem. I learned a lot from Bob. To my father, who taught me it's all about the people underneath you. My dad, every Thanksgiving, would make a turkey, stuffing, and all of the fixings and serve everybody in his office. It's not about me, it's about we. Ton of mentors. My last topic on this whole thing about the mosaic is balance. Now, somewhere out there is Kathy sitting in the room. There's a rumor that I'm a type A personality, and that's probably fair. I have no idea what balance means. I struggle with it every day of my life. Is it family? Is it personal? Is it work? Is it work? Is it family? Is it personal? I don't know. I know it's somewhere mixed up in all of that. Over the years, being 59, I've missed a lot of big stuff because I didn't have the balance right in my head. So I challenge us all, think about balance. Think about your work. Think about your family. Think about all of that stuff. So at the end of all of this, I am convinced that all there is a glass and there's water in it. It's not half full. It's not half empty. There's a glass and there's water. Now, if you were here last night, there's probably a little beer in it or a little bit of wine in it, but that's all it is. I was going through a rough period in my life a number of years ago, and I happened to pick up a piece, and it talked about our life as a mosaic. So for this talk, I decided to go online and find out what is a mosaic. And according to the Oxford Dictionary, and this is about the only thing I have to read, is a mosaic is a noun. It's a picture or pattern produced by arranging together small pieces of stone, tile, or glass. It's colorful, it's a variegated pattern. Most importantly, it's a combination of diverse elements forming more or less a coherent whole. So I'm going to ask you all to close your eyes. Go back through your life. Go backwards. Look at the good days. Look at the bad days. Look at the ups. Look at the downs. These are the chips or the glass of your mosaic. But when we focus too much on any one day, we lose perspective. Makes no sense. Why is that day so awesome? Why is that day so horrific? We lose perspective. Now come back, start to back up. And that's when we see the mosaic. And we see the beauty in our life, the beauty in our mosaic. Now we are able, in part of the definition, this combination of diverse elements form more or less the coherent whole. I am here today as I am because of all of the good, because of all of the bad. If I had only good, I wouldn't know how to compare it. If I had only bad, it would be meaningless. But now comes the really cool part in this whole thing about mosaic. Jim Roddy's mosaic touches mine. Okay? Kathy's mosaic touches mine. Kelly's does. Mark Olson's, Mark Fraker's, Brianna Brown, Chelsea. All of you are part of my mosaic at one way or another. So some of those dark days I have learned over time were horrific for me. I've actually had people come up to me and say, you know, when Kyle was hurt, you handled it with such dignity that I learned that I can get through anything. And all of a sudden that day isn't so bad for me anymore. I wish to hell it hadn't happened, no doubt in my mind. So you're always a power of example. So a couple of things and then I am done. Thank you for allowing me to be a chip in your mosaic. The size, the color, the texture of that chip is really up to you guys. There's a behaviorist that I read from time to time, and it's Soren Kierkegaard. And he says life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. Enjoy the creation of your mosaic. Have fun for the last couple of hours of this event. And thanks for letting me occupy some of your morning. Thank you all.
vocal, entrepreneur, idea man, driven. Our next speaker is quick to provide a straightforward answer, sometimes without a chaser. But that's oftentimes what it takes to gain success and remain that way. He's certainly a visionary, his business's growth attests to that, and he's more than willing to share some of the secrets of his success if it means a healthier industry. I'd like to next welcome to the stage Tom Bronson from Granberry Solutions.
Wow, I wore the same jacket. So, change starts at the top, right? But perhaps change at the top is not where you think it is. If your company is like most, ultimately the big problems in your company probably boil right up to your desk, the desk of the CEO. Why? Because that's the natural order of things, right? I mean, after all, the buck stops here. And when that problem reaches your desk, I'm going to be willing to bet that most of the solutions to those problems involve some sort of change. Changing a process, perhaps changing some of the talent, perhaps changing your culture. What I'm going to share with you today is a simple principle on how to solve problems in your organization. I first learned of this principle from one of my greatest mentors, and Stephen, I really appreciate you in this regard. I also lost one of my greatest mentors almost 20 years ago, my father, and the information that he was trying to pour into this thick skull of mine is still seeping through. He said to me quite simply right after I graduated college, "Son, you can't beat a man at his own game. If you really want to learn how to do something, then you need to talk to the folks that do the work, because they are the ones that really know how to get the job done." And not long after he delivered that pearl of wisdom, I had an opportunity to experience it firsthand. You see, I'd grown up in rural North Carolina, and in our backyard, we had a street lamp, or a safe light. And so when I bought my first house at age 23, one of the first things I wanted was a street lamp in my backyard. Why? I have no idea. Probably only because that's the way I grew up. So I called one of the largest power companies in the US, Duke Energy, and I said, "I'd like a safe light in my backyard." And they said, "Sure, we'll send an engineer out to meet you and talk through the process." So I met the engineer in my yard, and he explained to me that after he'd looked at the neighborhood, that the power source was 2 doors away. So they were going to have to set a pole and then trench through my yard, through 2 of my neighbors' yards, underneath 3 driveways in order to reach the power source. And that would take him some time to come up with a plan. So 4 months later, a team of engineers at Duke Energy came up with this plan on how to execute the work. And then I got the call from Larry. Larry is the guy that actually does the work. And he said, "Mr. Bronson, would you meet me in your backyard? Because we're going to figure out where to set this pole, and we have one chance to do this right." And so I met him in my yard. We marked the spot for the pole, and then he pulled out these elaborate plans that had been developed by a team of engineers back at Duke Energy. And 30 seconds later, he wadded up the plans and he threw them in his truck. And he said, "Those engineers are a bunch of idiots." And I said, "Why is that, Larry?" And he said, "They want me to trench your yard, trench through 2 of your neighbors' yards, go underneath 3 driveways to get to power down the road, when I have power right there." And he pointed to the back of my house. He said, "You see that power meter?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I do." And he said, "What do you think goes into that?" I said, "I don't know, power?" And he said, "Right." So all I have to do is tap that line right before it reaches your meter, and I've got the power I need and dig a 20-foot trench. You can't beat a man at his own game. Now, what did I learn from that, and how can you use that information to transform your business? Look, we've all got challenges we're trying to solve, right? Problems we're trying to overcome, broken processes that need to be fixed, and I'm willing to bet that when those reach your desk, that 9 out of 10 of you solve those problems in one of these 3 traditional ways. Number 1, you bury your head in the sand and you hope the problem goes away. Now, I am astounded at the number of leaders that I know that actually use that process. Number 2, you try to solve the problem yourself. It is your business after all, right? Or number 3, you gather your senior folks around the conference room table and you hash out some sort of solution, which is most certainly going to be misinterpreted by the people that do the work, you know, like Larry, the Duke Energy guy. What I'm suggesting is an alternate approach. Decisions have to be made at the top, right? What I'm suggesting is that you invert that organizational pyramid where the most important people still reside at the top. That's where decisions should be made. Why? Because those are the folks that do the work. Those are the folks that talk to your customers every day. So when we're faced with a challenge at my company, I talk to the folks that do the work. Why? Because they know more about the work that needs to be done than I do. They certainly know more than our executive team does. They probably even know more than their supervisor does, and that knowledge means something. So how do I put this into practice in a practical sense in my company? When a problem rises up, a big challenge, I gather the troops. And I mean all the troops, the folks on the front line, the most important at the top of the pyramid. I gather the supervisors, the executives that are involved in the problem, and we gather together in the conference room, and then we define the problem, and we set out to solve a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. Then the next step is we start brainstorming solutions. Every solution means something. All the knowledge at the front means something. So we brainstorm those solutions. Everybody's discussion is very important. And then I cut off the conversation, and just before I leave the room, by the way, the solution's not reached yet, right? Just before I leave the room, I tell them, okay, you have the resources that you need to solve this problem. More importantly, you are empowered to come up with a solution, and then I want you to take action. And they're gonna take the right action. Why? Because it's their plan. So, what are the results? In my company, there are too many than I can count in the 20 seconds I have left. But let me tell you a couple of them. Number 1, we have happy employees who are empowered to go out and make decisions. More importantly, we have a lot of happy customers. Why? Because they talk to happy people who are empowered to make decisions. Look, there are always challenges to solve. There are always things to do. And those problems sometimes will boil up in the organization, and they still do that, but not as often in my company, because the power or the people that are actually doing the work are the ones that solve those problems. Did I mention, by the way, that we have happy customers? Very happy customers. Our productivity is very high, because in some cases, we've actually cut the time to solve a problem in less than half, and that's huge. It can be huge for you. For us, it's been an absolute game changer. That makes us an agile, fast-moving company in this highly competitive game of technology that we all play. By the way, go Rangers. So, thank you very much. If you hear nothing else from me today, if you hear nothing at all besides the Go Rangers part, then I want you to hear this. talk to the folks that do the work. Why? Because those are the folks that know more. Empower them. It will change your company. It will change your life. And I promise you, it will change the way you look at the world. Thank you.
Dynamo, energetic, vibrant, motivated. 4 words aren't really enough to describe our next speaker, and they certainly fall short of providing an adequate picture of all that she brings to any organization of which she's a part. For RSPA, she's a tireless volunteer, a board member, and a spirited voice for the future of the industry. I'm proud to welcome Chelsea Paulson from North Country Business Products to the stage.
Good morning. Take a chance, spread my wings. The first time that I said this was when my dad asked if I was certain that I wanted to leave our small town of Bemidji, of about 10,000 people, to go to the University of Minnesota, a Big Ten school with a student population of about 80,000. He thought it was pretty funny when I said this, but really wasn't all that surprised. Now, the second time I said this is very confidential, and I'm trusting that all of you will keep this in this room. The second time I said this was while attending the University of Minnesota. I took a chance and spread my wings to try out to be Goldie Gopher, the school's mascot. Now, this may be surprising, but of all the take a chance, spread your wings situations that I've been in, the decision to go to these Goldie Gopher tryouts, yes, tryouts, a week's worth of intense competition, was the most terrifying. Goldie is a celebrity in the entire state of Minnesota. Everyone knows Goldie and that he spins his head, spins his body. He's fun and mischievous. Goldie never gets mad. He never gets down when the Gophers are losing. So knowing all of this, I was extremely nervous walking over to these tryouts. I had no mascot experience. I had no idea what these tryouts were going to consist of, but I took a chance and I did it, and I made the Goldie squad. To this day, I've been the only female to take on the responsibility of being this mischievous little rascal. The 3 years I did this, it was top secret. My family, my roommates, and a few close friends knew, and that was it. So that is why I ask that you do not share this beyond this room. So as Goldie, I performed in front of tens of thousands of fans at football games, basketball games. I was even fortunate enough to go to the Final Four tournament when the Gopher basketball team made it. I was also invited to many graduations, birthday parties, weddings. This is actually my wedding. I'm the one in the white dress that is far too psyched at the fact that Goldie's at my wedding. But Goldie's kind of a big deal. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to make the connection that the reason why I received the opportunity to speak here today on this stage is because I took a chance and went to those Goldie tryouts. So while I was at a Goldie event, I met a friend. She's actually the tan one on the far right. And she convinced me to join LeaderQuest, which was an extracurricular leadership program at the U. Next thing I know, I was given the opportunity to spread my wings and try my hand at running this leadership program, which I accepted. Fast forward 2 years. I graduated from the U of M and started working at my current company, North Country Business Products. Now, I started in sales. I quickly knew this wasn't the job for me long term, and an HR position opened up. And because of my time running the leadership program at the U, I had training experience, program development skills, interviewing skills. I developed a mentor program, and those experiences are what landed me the role in HR. Now, HR is a big area that deals with everything from what I think of as some of the somewhat more boring details, such as benefit administration, to more fun areas like hiring, compensation, employee relations, training, development, strategic planning, aligning our people with our business mission and goals, and so forth. So this broad new role allowed me several opportunities to take a chance and spread my wings. I got my HR certification. I became involved in both the local and national HR associations. And most importantly, I got involved outside of my company and in areas that traditional HR departments don't dig into. For example, we're 100% employee-owned, and I was asked by one of our ESOP vendors to speak at one of the local ESOP association events. One thing led to another, and I soon had the opportunity to spread my wings and participate on an ESOP association committee, and then asked to be a committee chair. Now I'm an officer for the association and the incoming chapter president. So now another chance to spread my wings outside of the typical HR role was when I was asked to present at a breakout session at Retail Now several years ago. Now I find myself regularly presenting on a committee, and then another very big spread your wing moments for me, I ran for and was elected to the RSPA Board of Directors. Now if you don't think that was out of my comfort zone, it most certainly was. You don't see many young female HR professionals at these RSPA conferences. In fact, whose sole focus is on human resources? Not a hand, exactly what I thought. And lastly, I took a chance when I was asked to present here to all of you. I told you I'd make the connection between this lovable little mascot and standing here on this stage today. And I'm excited to see what's going to come out of this opportunity, because what I have learned is that every time I take a chance, something unforeseen and typically very exciting comes out of it. Now, not all take a chance, spread your wings situations have to be trying out to be a mascot or speaking in front of hundreds of people. And quite honestly, most people wouldn't want to be on a stage talking in front of hundreds of people, but it applies to each of you in very unique ways. That's why you need to be open to the uncomfortable, open to the unknown, and have faith in yourself to take on a new opportunity, even though it's very terrifying. Now, there were similarities between all of these opportunities. I never assumed that I knew it all. I've had a continual hunger for knowledge, and I did not resist the change that was coming. And what I've realized is that the more you learn, the broader spectrum of people that you interact with, the easier it is to grow in your own position, grow within your organization, and grow your organization as a whole. And most importantly, the more you learn about your team, your customers, your industry, the easier it is to adapt to changes around you. Now, as Kelly, Emmett, and many others have talked about this week, there are a lot of disruptions going on in our industry and in the world around us. And we need to be a part of that disruption and make the necessary changes to create the path for others to follow. So I challenge you to not assume that you know all the answers and to live by this ancient proverb that I try to live by: seek first to understand, then be understood. You'll be amazed at what doors will open when you really listen to what others have to say and when you're not pushing your own ideas and pushing your own agenda. What I want to leave you with is that if you want something that you've never done, that you've never had, then you've got to do something that you've never done. Many of you probably have an opportunity that has been hanging out there, or maybe one that has presented itself while you've been here at Retail Now, to take a chance, to do something new, something out of the norm, something a little risky. And I encourage you all, when you walk out of these doors today and head back to real life, to take a chance and spread your wings. Thank you.
Committed, loyal, humor, listener, trusted voice. To call our next speaker committed to the channel is really a huge understatement. For nearly 20 years of his career, he's been a tireless advocate on behalf of business leaders. He strives to help business owners filter out the noise that can be distracting from making measured and careful decisions, and seeks to help them fine-tune and focus for the future. He's brought that approach to RSPA as well, where he's one of our most active volunteers. It's an honor now to welcome Jim Roddy from Vantiv Integrated Payments to the stage today.
Thank you very much, Kelly. Never have two words been more powerful. When we were young and innocent, we were told these two words would make all our dreams come true. Instead, these two words have made those around you unhappy and often made you feel even worse. So what do these two terrible, horrible no good, very bad words? I do. No, I'm not talking about your wedding vows, okay? I'm not talking there. I don't want to go there. I'm talking about you and me as business leaders always saying, I do. I do the sales. I do the installations. I do the troubleshooting. I do the accounting, the research, the purchasing. I clean up the mess. I do everything that the rest of my staff can't do themselves. A year ago on the Retail Now stage, we heard Michael Gerber, the world-renowned small business guru, talk about the plight of the small business leader who always said, I do. Now, Michael's terminology was busy, 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 doing it, doing it, doing it. He was so right, wasn't he? We as business leaders do everything except effectively delegate to our team. So that's what I'm going to talk about today, effective delegation and the impact that it's had on my life. I've learned firsthand that delegation doesn't just get jobs off your plate, but more importantly, it does three things. First, it builds the people on your team. Second, it makes their career and their life more rewarding with more responsibility. And third, it significantly improves your company. Now, it's a complicated subject. I could talk about it here all day, but I'm going to try to make it simple for us. We're going to expand our collective skill set from these two words, I do, to 6 easy-to-remember words. Okay, you ready for it? I do, we do, you do. 3 steps to delegation in just 6 words. I do, we do, you do. Everybody say it with me, please. I do, we do, you do. Very good. All right, delegating right up live on stage. So delegation step number 1, do the job well yourself. Step number 2, we do the job well with the person who you're looking to train, who you're looking to delegate to, who you're teaching. And then delegation step number 3, watch that person until they do the job well, until they're proficient at the new task. You know what you get if you don't do this? Do you know what you get if you don't do I do, we do, you do? You end up in doo-doo, all right? And you don't want to be there. Remember, I do, we do, you do, not doo-doo. So we've been laughing about this, but actually the subject of delegation is a pretty serious subject for me. I've lived both the highs and the lows of delegation while I've been constructing a viable business over many years. It's a struggle that's cost me time, cost me money, employees, and at times my mental well-being. Many of you don't know, but for most of my 20s, I was a self-employed sole proprietor. I published a sports magazine about high school, college, and minor league sports in Northwest Pennsylvania. We had lots of enthusiastic readers and faithful advertisers, but for 5.5 years, it was mostly me doing the writing, the editing, the layout, the sales, the billing, the delivery, the collections, the recycling, the garbage, you name it. To give you a picture of the resources I had at my disposal, my delivery vehicle was a 1992 maroon Geo Prism. So that tells you what I was working with back then. The stress of a 70-hour work week and the inability to afford anything other than SpaghettiOs for dinner caused me to be interested in a job at Business Solutions magazine. Now, when I tried to sell my sports magazine, potential buyers asked me what I had actually built. Who was I leaving behind? And what structure was left to build upon? The reality was nothing. Absolutely nothing. I had poured over half a decade of my life into something, and it was gone. So I did what any reasonable business person would do. I cried. I can count on one tissue the number of times I've cried during my work career, but I certainly earned this one. So the leadership philosophy I've embraced since shuttering my business is do nothing by yourself. Now, just to clarify, I don't mean do nothing by yourself, okay? What I mean to say is when you do something, always use it as a teaching opportunity, a delegation opportunity, instead of just completing the task at hand all alone. When I was managing editor at Business Solutions, I invested time with our production manager, and very quickly she replaced me in that position. When I was editorial director, I invested time with our copy editor, and she replaced me in that role in the near term. When I was operations director, I invested time with the project manager, which allowed him to grow so I could move into my role as company president. Now notice how I used the phrase repeatedly, invested time. Delegation will not give you lift the next day, the next week, or maybe not even the next month. But just like any good investment, it will pay you exponential dividends at some point in the future. So we've been talking about the lessons, but I want you to get started on the delegation path. So take 30 seconds right now and make a note. I don't care if you do it on your phone or a scrap sheet of paper. Make a note that will help you build a viable business. Write down one of your jobs that you can hand off, a job you know you should hand off, and make a commitment right now that you will hand it off when you return home from retail now. It doesn't matter what the job is. I just want you to write it down. It can be selling a new client. It can be handling customer complaints, hiring a new employee, bolting down a key process or procedure. It could be sorting the mail. Then pick the person you're going to work with on this job. Remember, it's going to be we do. We do. It's not I do. Again, write it down and take the first step towards effective delegation when you're back in the office. Invest time in your greatest resource, which isn't you, it's your people. Invest time showing them, teaching them, training them, explaining the why. Invest time building systems so they can do the job without you there. In many cases, and believe me, I know this from experience, they'll end up doing the job better than you. Don't stop at the words I do. Go all the way with I do, we do, you do. Say it loud with me one more time. I do, we do, you do. Yes, I do, we do, you do will make your business much more effective and make you a better leader. I do, we do, you do, and I thank you.
Focused, determined, generous of time, and a fountain of knowledge. Anytime we're able, we seek the opportunity to invite our next guest to bring his expertise to our table. His ability to take complex ideas, break them apart, and make them accessible has helped us in more ways than we can articulate. He's a deep thinker about the issues that affect the industry, and he doesn't hesitate to share what he knows in an effort to help it to be the very best it can be. For our last lightning round leadership talk, it's my privilege to welcome Terry Ziegler from DataCap Systems.
Good morning, RSPA. How's everybody doing today? You know, Jim, I must be the best delegator in the world because my staff doesn't think I do anything. They might be. They might be right. Friction. It's a new catchword, particularly among the private equity guys and venture capitalists that are pouring tons of money into technologies while trying to Uberize everything. When evaluating investments, they ask whether a product or service is removing friction from a business process. What they often don't think about is whether that friction is anyway being removed among the industry constituents necessary to deliver the concept. Was there friction between the telephone companies when they failed at launching SoftCard, or among the merchants that failed with MCX? That's a pretty good bet on both counts. When looking at this industry, there is no shortage of new concepts. And there certainly are a cross-section of folks in this room that variably compete and cooperate, or not really. Today, I want to talk to you about that friction in relationships. I'd like to start by sharing a little bit about DataCap's history that inevitably forced us to deal with that friction in evolving relationships. Now, the gray hairs in this room may enjoy the trip down memory lane. The young guns have to trust that this history has taken me to a very important point. But just for fun, I'd like to ask how many people in this room have more than 20 years experience in the industry? Give the RSPA some help here. It's a lot of hands. How about 30 years? Wow, 40? Hands go down. 50. Look at that. That's terrific. Congratulations. That's a lot of durability in this industry. Well, you know, I was telling Jim Roddy last night about, you know, when I started in this industry, back in 1977, actually, this is kind of almost my 40th year. And Jim reminded me that he was in Mrs. Schute's second grade class at that time. So anyway, we started our business as a cash register POS manufacturer 33 years ago. Our claim to fame was we were the very first company to put integrated payments into a standard ECR POS system. That was in 1984. We were also innovators in full transaction capture and communications, hence the name DataCap Systems. Everybody wonders why we're named that. We sold our products through a channel, an integration channel, to that places where NCR, IBM, Fujitsu weren't. They were in large store, many lanes, large chains. So we went small stores, mostly one register per store, sometimes two. And we did some great business with boutique shops like Dress Barn, Fredericks of Hollywood, Mother's Work, stores that had a few stores to hundreds of stores. Not only did they drive the use of integrated payments in mid-sized retail segments, but they also drove the use of full transaction data, what we now call big data. And we polled and sent that data largely to service bureaus, now called the cloud. The important part of these comments is we successfully installed tens of thousands of POS registers in association with 50 or so key software partners, had a very successful ongoing business. As part of that product evolution, we worked with all the major card processors to implement our payments, our integrated payments in our own terminals. But we wound up spending so much money on the implementation of integrated payments across our ECR, POS, and PC POS lines that we decided to standardize all that payment activity around a custom piece of hardware, a sort of one-to-many interface that minimized those enormous costs. So thinking about our next business step, we got this crazy idea that it might make sense to lift that payments technology out of our own products and sell it to other ECR POS guys. After all, integrated payments were eliminating friction at the point of sale. But what about the friction within the necessary partner relationships to deliver that product? So our marketing research put us in front of a bunch of bank card processors to talk about having them distribute this product through their channels. One particular processor liked this idea a lot. But they were also a communications company in addition to a card processor. And they wanted to use our products, basically, to help increase their data communications value to other processors and become a universal pipe for the entire payments industry. That was one of our first hardcore introductions to the power of conflicts of interest and the friction created. My gut reaction was that none of the other processors were going to embrace this company for datacomms, while I also owned a card processing company. This processor strongly disagreed. So we checked around with some of our other processor contacts and got answers that are interested in that arrangement that ranged from no to hell no. That distribution idea was going down in flames due to those conflicts of interest and the friction created. Of course, the challenge is that these conflicts of interest lessons are easily learned when other people experience them, not so much when you're getting your own butt kicked. So that particular business arrangement was doomed. The product idea was still pretty good. So we extracted the hardware and the software component that represented those payments interfaces, and we visited a number of VCR POS companies to pitch the idea. What do you guess the answer was? No to hell no. It had nothing to do with the concept, but everything to do with the conflicts of interest. What I was universally told was, listen, Terry, we love the idea. We'd love to do it. We'd do it in a heartbeat. But you're competing against us with your own ECR POS line, and we're simply not going to deal with you while that's going on. The risks are just too high. So here we were, this very profitable ECR POS business, huge installed base of terminals. Yet when we looked at the future and the shifting sands in the industry, it was clear to us that we had to make a choice. Either be a full-blown systems house and compete with the same developer partners that really made us successful, or change to being a provider of integrated payment systems to maintain our channel partner relationships. Standing still was just simply not an option. So we chose the integrated payments path and burned the ships in the harbor on that ECR POS business. Now you might imagine how difficult a decision this really was. But the answer was completely driven by the challenge of creating business relationships without friction. We found that no matter how loud that siren song played for this terrific business partnership potential, the reality is where there are conflicts of interest in a business relationship between the parties, things just don't work out. So why is this conflict of interest issue and the friction it creates so important to you folks today? Well, we all spent the week here. We see bank card acquirers that are selling their own POS systems at or below cost and even buying up ISVs in order to get the processing revenue. And then they believe that the reseller is going to cooperate with them by bringing their merchants to them for processing services. That's friction, folks. We see resellers and ISVs set themselves up as ISOs with highly competent salespeople on the ISO side thinking that somehow their account's going to be left alone because the reseller says so. That's friction. We see cloud-based POS guys wanting to use resellers to get to market, but they implement direct-to-merchant models that take away the reseller's value. Then they wonder why they can't build a reseller network delivering support increasingly complex systems. That's friction. None of these friction-laden situations are really scalable, simply because there's an ecosystem in this industry with a lot of interdependencies among the constituents. Highly successful companies stay in their own lane, they take their own profits, and they partner with companies that can advance their respective interests by providing a value proposition that's complementary and synergistic with their own. You all know who these companies are. You see them every day. You should try to emulate their business models. Tweak them to best fit your own business paradigm. DataCap doesn't think of itself as a provider of integrated electronic payment systems. That's what we sell, but it's not really who we are. We are in reality a constituent management company that dwells on how to work in a very complex ecosystem that requires as many as 5 to 6 separate entities to deliver an integrated payment system. If we do that successfully, then we win. In this industry's reality, the fast-moving pace of innovation, whether that be technology, business models, pricing options, product delivery options, we all need to be constituent management companies, and each of us has to look at our various partner relationships and be certain that we have not created conflicts of interest with those partners, all without ever fooling ourselves into believing the relationship will ultimately be successful if that friction exists. We have found that friction in partner relationships is a really, really bad thing when you're trying to go fast and far. Now, not all of you are going to have to burn your ships in the harbor as you contemplate your next business step. But I believe you're going to have to get rid of the friction in your partner relationships by choosing the right partners and establishing the terms of engagement without any mystification. I also believe that if you focus on consistently building those partner relationships relatively free of friction, I'm quite confident you'll be able to scale your business synergistically and effectively and profitably. Thanks so much for your time, and have a great, great day.
Thank you so much to all 5 of our lightning round leaders. Please help me give them one additional round of applause.